Monsters coming down the hall, spires cover all the walls. Serial killer is on the line, wants to know if you have the time. Aliens are landing soon, this will mean certain doom. A chainsaw sputters and comes alive, blood and death are close behind. One thing you can be certain of, the zombies just can't get enough. Just one more bite is all they want. The ghosts downstairs are on the hunt. The Shade Chronicles are keeping score, that's what all the writing's for. They record their stories one by one so you don't miss all the fun.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Shade Chronicles, a podcast featuring short works of sci-fi and horror fiction. Here are your hosts.
Hi, this is Derek Lefford.
Hi, this is Lawrence Trokey, and thank you for spending your time with us. Let's get started with our first story.
The Shade Chronicles are keeping score, that's what all the writing's for. They record their stories one by one so you don't miss all the fun.
Indulgetia Dulgeo by Christopher Hayes. Their current stands, who rules the dreary coast, a sordid god. Down from his hairy chin, a length of beard descends, uncombed, unclean. His eyes like hollow furnaces on fire. A girdle foul with grease binds his obscene attire. Virgil Aeneid Book 6, 298 to 301. Translation by John Dryden. Beyond the broken pavement, where the solitary telephone pole reached skyward like a finger pleading to the heavens, a small shrine had been laid out at the foot of a high concrete block wall. On it stood a few burnt-out candles and dead flowers and a solitary teddy bear. Around it, the dry brown grass seemed sterile and poisoned. An old man, his face emaciated, with sunken cheeks and unkempt beard, had been drawn to the 2 coins on the small shrine. Clearly, they had been placed there as an ofrendas, an offering to the dead during Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Although the candles were no longer lit to guide the forsaken, and the cempasúchil, the pungent flowers used to attract the spirits who would come to visit their mortal loved ones, were all withered, whoever had built this ofrendas here had made the effort to attract them to it. It was fortunate that the food which had been left on the shrine had not yet been eaten. It was said that dogs could sense the dead around them, and although several of them loitered at either end of the wall, they seemed to know that this was a dead offering. They would, in all likelihood, wait all day, and if at sunset the spirit did not appear to eat, they would probably move in. The placing of other elements around the sides of the ofrendas, such as cigarettes and liquor, told him that this shrine had not been built for angelitos, the little angels or spirits of children. This was an ofrendas for a grown-up. The shrine seemed to speak only of sadness, of reflection and supplication. Perhaps the soul, for whomever this shrine had been made, would be able to find peace to make that final journey. The old man considered the coins carefully before bending down to pick them up. His touch seemed to infuse the copper discs with memories of Mi'kmaq, the place of the dead. As he turned one over and then the other between long bony fingers, they seemed to resonate with endings, with a bargain made. Curiously, he peered closer at them. A crude Calaca's figure had been scratched into the surface of both in an attempt to draw the attention of La Calaca, death, to this place. The coins had no value. They were worn and tainted with verdigris, as if they had been left out many times. Deftly he placed them in one of the pockets of his voluminous coat. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. They resonated with omens. Around him, it was as if he were able to hear the whispers of the dead, disembodied voices keening against their circumstances. A sudden vision of limbo, that first circle of hell, materialized into his thoughts, as if to remind him of his purpose, and he recalled Virgil's observations. For this failure and for no other fault, here we are lost, and our sole punishment is without hope to live on, in desire. Fideles difuntos, the faithful departed. He whispered to no one in particular. If there had been anyone standing near him, they would not have been able to hear him anyway. Where among the dead in this forsaken place would he find anyone faithful? Indulgetia Dulgeo, the inscription on his briefcase read, in faded black letters. The old man crossed the street and idly perused the messages in a darkened shop window. Written on small postcards in shaky handwriting, they bore witness to the many indulgencies of the writers, as if they could obtain absolution by the mere act of confession. He carefully rubbed his neck and shoulders, the aching muscles testimony to uncomfortable niacin out of the way, pay-by-the-hour hotels, and scoured the messages once more. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." They often started with this plea, this attempt to reduce their own temporal punishment. He smiled and touched the glass, as if to make contact with them. That was his purpose. Locked inside his briefcase were the many souls he took, along with the coins for payment people left behind on shrines and sacred places to pave the journey of others to purgatory. Indulgetia Dulgeo indeed. For a moment he was distracted by indistinct memories, and only obliquely observed the young girl as she came to stand in front of the shrine. Indulgently, he studied her back, relishing this opportunity to simply stand and observe. As long as she remained in front of the shrine, the soul he was expecting, that he had been paid to take across, would not appear. After a short while, during which time she did nothing but stare down at the dead flowers and the burned-out candles, the old man moved across the road. Late afternoon sunshine cast long shadows across the cracked pavement, creating a border between light and dark on the concrete wall that appeared to sever it in two. Presently he came to stand by her side. Discreetly he did nothing, content to observe her, gauge her mood. Sometimes he could read the souls of the living, listen to their deep fears and woes. Occasionally he could sense that interventions had been answered, prayers granted. Morosely, she turned her face upwards to look into his. The mere action of her looking in his direction startled him, and for a moment he considered turning away. Finally, she filled the silence between them, and spoke with anger and accusation in her voice.
"You have the coins?"
she demanded bluntly, as if questioning his presence. "You can see me?" he countered in astonishment. "You are a sensitive?" The girl turned her face back to the shrine and muttered inconsequentially,
"I placed the coins there."
"You wish to purchase passage?" he proposed, in a sharp, businesslike tone. She nodded and indicated the shrine as if to explain her presence.
"He was a bad man, a very bad man,"
she continued tonelessly.
"Now he walks the shore of Acheron, refusing to go over and suffer his damnation."
Once more she looked into his face. His eyes burned like hollow furnaces.
"I have given you the requisite obolus, and the fare is paid. Indulgentia Dulgeo,"
she concluded.
"You are required to take his soul into eternal damnation. The young walk before you, the old behind. Young babes are carried on your saddle."
The old man recognized the symbolism. Many times he had observed himself depicted in paintings, venturing forth on a black horse and reaping the dead and dragging them into hell. What was his crime? He queried subtly.
"Does it matter?"
The young girl replied softly. "What is your name?" the old man retorted gently. For a moment, the young girl seemed to consider the question carefully.
"Hannah,"
she said at last, as if she had plucked the word from thin air or from some distant recollection. The old man nodded with quiet assent, as if it was sufficient for the moment. "And do you have grace?" he asked presently. The young girl examined the tanned, creased face. Pale skin appeared like old leather stretched tightly over his skull.
"Grace?"
she queried petulantly. Her concentration seemed to bore into his face like a splash of caustic, and he looked away for a moment. Darkness was closing like a descending shroud, and the pale glow of street lamps cast multiple shadows around them. At either end of the wall, the waiting dogs lay patiently. 'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out. From the pocket in her long tunic, the young girl extracted 3 small cards, holding them at waist level. The old man peered at them closely. They were tarot cards, and she held them spread out, imitating a small fan. "Death," the old man murmured darkly. In his mind, he read their contents. The death card with the contorted laka laka, wielding his black scythe, the 9 of swords and the 6 of swords. He pursed his lips thoughtfully and considered this young girl with fresh eyes. Behind her clouded gaze seemed to lurk terrible secrets. The death of an old life, the old man casually recited as if revealing a deep wisdom. "You are preparing a different future," he added as the young girl stared hard at the shrine. She nodded her head slowly, as if prompting the old man for further revelations. "You have experienced much hurt and torment," he said, considering the Six of Swords. "Remember what you have experienced. The woman will eventually be reconciled. You must remember that all things are made for us to learn. In time, you will come to respect the gifts you have been given." Presently, he looked down at the Nine of Swords card. It depicted a girl sitting up in bed, hugging her knees and resting her head against them. Clearly, she was tormented by her thoughts. Uncovered, the image of the girl seemed to suggest vulnerability. Beneath the bed, there was a white teddy bear and a small box. "The power of 3, the old man suggested. "Your feminine energy is strong, and it requires action." For a moment, he seemed to consider something important. "Return in 3 days, and your wish will be granted." He placed the coins back on the shrine and walked away. 3 days later, an automobile pulled up and parked beside the concrete wall. The driver opened the door, but did not get out of the car. Although her face was in shadow, it was easy to tell she was sad. There was something about how she turned away from the sun and rested the weight of her hands on the steering wheel. Something about her silent composure that caused Hannah to sigh. The young girl watched the driver lean out of the car and stretch her hand out towards one of the burned-out candles. Around her, the sun was gradually setting, casting deep wells of shadow around her. As Hannah looked on, the old man reappeared, as if he had materialized from the concrete wall. Hannah turned her face upwards to greet him, and he smiled to her as if acknowledging an old friend. "She cannot see us," he confessed casually. She had constructed the shrine well, the old man considered. The candles and the pungent flowers would attract whichever spirit she had paid passage for. The teddy bear was a revelation. The spirit would instantly recognize their meaning and know the implications behind them. Silently, he contemplated the 2 coins in their place on the shrine.
Voodoo.
The girl whispered as if casting spells. As she spoke, she produced the death card and the 9 of Swords from her pocket, as if they represented her purpose here. The woman in the car had realized she could not reach the candles from her seat and had got out. Solemnly, she stood before the shrine as if demanding absolution.
What you do to someone else, you do to yourself.
The young girl explained as she turned to face the old man.
When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I felt as a child, I reasoned as a child. When I became older, I put away childish things. His Loa has spoken to me, has cautioned him against his desires, and he has ignored it. Now his Loa, the child of Bon Dieu, the Lord of the Dead, comes to carry him across. Do you not?
"I am known by many names," the old man considered carefully. The rage in the young girl's eyes burned like hellfire, as if they could consume the whole world. He turned to look around him. The darkness was complete, and the sky was flecked with a myriad of stars that seemed to sweep the sky like pathways into eternity. "Now I understand," the old man confessed wearily. It was a common occurrence in these troubled times. People demanded justice to extend into eternity, a hell in which the damned had already told God to get away, to leave them alone. His presence here with this young girl was to grant their wish. The woman had crouched down and had picked up one of the burnt-out candles. "She is sad that they have not brought her the spirit of her loved one," the old man observed studiously. "She fails to understand the nature of corpse candles," he added. "Omens of impending death." The young girl considered ominously, and not necessarily of physical death. Alas, none of the souls he took had realized at the time that passage had been paid on their behalf, and so when he appeared to grant them their wish to be left alone, they willingly crossed over. Only when they reached the other side and entered through the gates of purgatory itself did they realize the nature of the hell they were consigning themselves to. And then there were the souls who had eschewed the coin, walking in twilight between this world and the next. Soundless steps left no tracks on the shore, and though the many hands of those who had crossed beckoned constantly and whispered their names ceaselessly, they refused to cross, knowing where their fate lay and the eternity that awaited them. It was true that not every lost soul wanted to be found, since such souls are not really lost. In their exigency to avoid eternal damnation, large amounts of money must change hands. Others must watch over them, making sure that the necessary passage was not hidden about them. Often eyes and mouths were sewn shut for such a contingency. The young girl was becoming agitated. It was getting late and the moon had already appeared above the rooftops, an ivory orb racked by clouds that sailed slowly across it like the rigging of ancient ships. Urgently, she peered upwards at the old man. The woman standing by the shrine seemed to be in deep contemplation. Reverently, she held the candle to her chest as if it could provide succor to her soul.
Does he come yet?
She demanded irritably. Fear mixed with acute loathing seemed to mold her face into a mask of pure hatred. She spat out her words as if her heart had turned to bile and her soul to brimstone. From one end of the block wall came the low stucco sound of dogs growling. Several were standing with hackles raised, peering beyond the old man and the girl as if specters were approaching. The young girl braced herself like a strangler and turned to look in the same direction. At the other end of the wall, the dogs had prostrated themselves and were howling into the sky. Around them, the air turned colder, as if it were awash with ice crystals. Presently, the spirit of the dead man appeared. He seemed disoriented, as if he had been pulled suddenly from deep sleep. Anguish seemed to mold his features into a veil of disbelief. He looked from the woman to the old man, and finally the young girl. Triumphantly, the girl held out the death card as if it were an invitation to hellfire. He seemed to suddenly have noticed the shrine with the 2 coins and the teddy bear. They seemed to fill him with a loathing he could not control, and he recognized their portents immediately.
Let me introduce you to my companion.
She indicated the old man with a relish mixed with obvious glee. The spirit looked from her to him.
His name is Karen. Some people know him as Baron Samedi, the Loa of the dead. He has come to complete your journey. There you will pay for your crimes, acting out a grotesque parody of your failures here on Earth.
She paused for a moment, as if to intensify the implications of her next words. It is time to leave, the old man announced solemnly, picking up the coins once more. Around him, the street began to fade into shadows, leaving an indistinct outline of the wall and the cracked pavement. The spirit of the dead man searched his surroundings, with panic etched on his face, as if he were seeking refuge. Slowly, the old man opened the battered briefcase, and the muted voices of many souls cried out in anguish. The old man placed the coins reverently into the bag, and at once the spirit seemed to lose its shape. Briefly, the young girl saw him cry out. Then, in an instant, he seemed to dissolve into smoke. The old man opened the briefcase wider so that it gaped like the mouth of a chasm, and the spirit was sucked inside. Gently, the old man fastened the clasp that locked the briefcase shut and turned towards the young girl. "What will you do now?" the old man asked with a curious frown.
I have one more office to perform and then I can leave.
Hannah reflected, staring at the woman as she returned to her car.
The woman, she grieves still. I will return with her, and I will try to assuage her grief.
The old man peered down at her curiously. The girl looked down at the shrine once more as the dogs moved in to eat.
It is the least I can do.
For 2 seasons, the Shade Chronicles podcast has introduced you to a universe of the scary, strange, weird, and fascinating. Now all of the stories from the first 2 seasons of the podcast are collected and available in a hardback book for your reading enjoyment. Newly edited and revised, experience the fright and wonder again of the stories from the Shade Chronicles, and join us on an exploration of imagination. Find your copy of Tales from the Shade Chronicles podcast on Amazon today, also available in paperback and Kindle versions.
Attention Shade Chronicle podcast listeners. The merchandise store is now open. You can find the merchandise store on the merchandise tab on the Shade Chronicles website, which is at theshadechronicles.com. Find premium t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, travel mugs, ball caps, and more at the Shade Chronicles Podcast merchandise store. We now resume your regular programming.
Flashes by Mark Connelly. Walking into Starbucks, Catherine spotted Ted sitting alone by the window. He seemed preoccupied and did not look up even when she pulled a chair closer to join him. Looking out the window, he tapped his cardboard cup, lost in thought. "Did the meeting go well?" she ventured. Ted turned and smiled. "Oh yes, all good. She approved the budget. I'm just a little..." He shook his head with a bewildered sigh. "What is it? You feel okay?" "I'm fine. Well, not really. Something strange happened today. Eerie." He paused, twisting his cup left and right on the table before looking up. "I saw myself today." "Saw yourself?" "Yes, I saw myself, watched myself, but not me now. Me 50 years ago." She leaned forward. Ted was never given to whimsy or fanciful stories. The flat, soft tone of his voice was troubling. "What do you mean?" "I met with Bess Andre at the Fairmont at 11. We went over the budget. She liked what she saw and said she just needs this month's bank statements to approve it. I told her she'd get them end of the month. Meeting went great, no questions. So we chit-chatted a bit, took a few pictures, then I headed out." "Okay," Catherine said softly. "Well, I parked down on Pine, so I crossed California to walk down Mason and froze. I just froze. In the driveway plaza of the Mark Hopkins, there was a 1973 white VW Bug. What caught my eye was the rear fender. It had a crescent-shaped crease, a dent. I had a white 73 VW with the same dent in the same fender. That was my car, but new. I drove that thing into the ground back in the 80s. I sold it for junk for $100 to a friend who wanted parts. But this morning it was back, brand new, but with that dent I got just after I bought it. The trunk lid was up and I saw this guy arranging things, and he was left-handed like me. He held the lid up with his right hand the way I used to, and he wore his watch on this right arm like I do. And it was one of those thick leather cuff watch bands from the 70s. I had a band like that and the same watch, gold with a black face. And he was wearing what I wore then. Dingo boots, flared jeans, black turtleneck, tweed jacket with leather elbow patches, and he had mirror aviator sunglasses. My girlfriend Tony got me a pair for my birthday that year. I tell you, it was me. Then it hit me, the Mark Hopkins. April 1974, my sister and her roommate flew out from Wisconsin on spring break and stayed there. My friend Rick and I took the girls around all week. Fisherman's Wharf, Chinatown, the Cannery. End of the week I drove them to the airport. So I was watching myself packing up their stuff in my car at the Mark Hopkins, getting ready to take them to SFO in April 1974. I swear it was me. Same car, same clothes, same watch, same sunglasses. It was me. She nodded, sensing his unease. I could see the license plate, but who remembers their number from 50 years ago, right? But I know I have old snapshots. I'm sure they'd show the plate. So I picked up my phone to take a picture. Just then, the kid turned to face me. And just as I snapped the picture, he was gone. Nothing. He was gone. The car was gone, just like that. Here, look. Ted held up his phone, scrolling through pictures. Look, this is us last night. This is Bess and me this morning. And this last one is the picture I took in the driveway of the Mark Hopkins. No VW, no driver, just that delivery van in the background. But I swear that guy in that car were there, and it was me. I saw me in April 1974. I Googled it. Easter was the 14th that year. The girls flew home that Friday. Would have been April 19th, 1974. Just before noon. Experienced anything like that before? Never. You know me. I taught physics. Only believe what I can see and touch, but this today. The car and the guy. If I saw one separately, okay, a weird coincidence. But the guy dressed like me in my car in front of the Mark Hopkins? That was me. April 1974, getting ready to drive the girls to the airport. Just too many coincidences at once. Look, if I saw that car last week in a parking lot in Houston, I would freak. Looks like my old car with the exact same dent. That would be something in itself. But that car in the same spot 50 years later with someone dressed like me, same build, left-handed, same sunglasses, turtleneck? What are you going to do? You seem so rattled. I've never seen you like this before. Are you sure you're okay? He waved his hand. I already booked an appointment with my internist. Maybe it's the new meds. I've had some intense dreams lately. Vivid, lucid dreams. Maybe that's it. It must be my new meds. He nodded as if repetition would reassure him. That must be it. I hope. What's wrong? It was just a flash, maybe? Like a memory. You walked by the mark and remembered your sister. Just a vivid memory. You have a good memory. I don't know. He muttered softly. I keep thinking of my grandfather. I flew home for Christmas one year and visited him at the VA. He was seeing things too. Dementia. When I walked in the room, he kept calling me Johnny. Johnny, where you been? Johnny, you okay? You all better? My grandmother told me he thought I was his army buddy Johnny, who died of flu in 1918. She tried to explain to him that I was Teddy, his grandson. You remember Moira's boy? Ted's eyes watered and his voice quavered. Katie, I will never forget him looking around confused and panicked, asking, Moira? Who's Moira? He didn't remember my mom, his own daughter. He died a few months later. I never forgot that. She reached across the table and took his arm. Suddenly, and for the first time since she met him, he began to look his age. It was nothing, just a flash, an episode. We all have moments like that. It was nothing. I don't know, he said. You hit 74 and something like this happens and you wonder if it's a sign of what's coming. The start of something. Look, you put that budget together and 2 CPAs and a lawyer went over it and never asked us a question. I'm sure you're okay. I never saw any changes, and how long have we known each other? Just see your doctor about the meds. He forced a smile, then shook his head. But I swear that Volkswagen and that guy were there. They were real. He pointed out the window. See that Volvo and the crossing guard? As real as those two. They both watched as the light changed, and the crossing guard waved at the Volvo driver, who nodded and pulled forward to make a slow right onto Folsom. Hey, Teddy, get the girls off on time? Yeah, no problem. Ran late as usual, but their flight was delayed 20 minutes. Saw them off? Jan said she had a great time. You made a big impression on her. Well, too bad she's in Wisconsin. Ted looked up from his beer. You know, Rick, something really weird happened today. Like Twilight Zone weird. What? Okay, I'm at the Mark Hopkins packing up the car. You remember all the stuff they bought in Chinatown? I wondered if they could get it all on a plane. So anyway, I'm packing up the trunk in front of the hotel, trying to make sure I don't break anything. And I see this old guy out of the corner of my eye run across the street, and he stops dead and stares at my car. Like he's never seen a Volkswagen before. Just standing there staring. For a second I thought it was my grandfather. Built like me, same hair, but older, you know. He had a mustache though, and my grandfather doesn't. I thought he must be looking at something behind me, so just kept packing things. Then, and this is the strange part, he picked up something. Looked like a piece of black glass size of a postcard. He holds it up, and from the corner of my eye, I see it light up like a miniature TV. So I turn to get a good look, and he vanishes. In a flash, he's gone. He didn't run away, he vanished. I mean, if he turned to run, I would see his back, right? One split second he's there, then he's gone. How do you explain that? You're the physics major, Einstein, not me. Hell, I just stayed in school long enough to dodge the draft. Rick pointed to the sunglasses on the bar. Maybe it was those. What do you mean? Oh, the guy was real, but he was probably a mirage, a reflection. The guy was there all right, but he was behind you, standing in the doorway maybe. Someone opens the glass door and his image is reflected and you catch it in your glasses. You said you only saw him in the corner of your eye, right? So you move your head a few inches, or maybe someone closes the door and the image disappears. He was a reflection, huh? Rick suggested, cocking an eyebrow. This guy was no reflection. He was 3D. I could see his necktie. And he had some kind of pin or button on his lapel. There was substance there, texture. Flesh and blood, real. He was there. Hey, weird things happen. Rick tapped his temple. These things aren't cameras. You see things and your brain processes them, or doesn't. I tell you about my wallet last week? I swore I lost it. I always keep it on my nightstand. Last week, I'm getting ready for work and can't find it. Okay, I left it in my jeans. Not there. I check my jacket. I look under the bed, on top of the dresser. The jacket's in the closet. I pull the nightstand from the wall to see if it slipped on the floor. I check the sofa in the living room, then it hit me. I must have left in the car when I went to the drive-thru to cash a check. I run to the car, look all over. Not there? I search the bedroom again. Phone rings, so I run down to the kitchen. It's Jessica. I tell her I must have left my wallet at her place. She tears her place apart. Nothing. I hang up, go upstairs, and there's my wallet on the night table. It was there all the time. A black wallet on a white table. How could I miss that? Rick glanced down at Ted's change on the bar. Hey, deal of the day. Trade you $1 for a dime. He jerked his thumb toward the payphone. I gotta call and see when my car's ready. He tossed a bill on the bar and slid the dime into his palm. Be right back. Ted picked up his sunglasses, watching the reflection of the bottles, then put them on, turning left and right, trying to catch sight of the jukebox behind him. Can you believe it? Rick muttered when he returned. $28.50 for a new tire, believe that? But hey, you don't like my Mirage idea? Got one better for you, Einstein. It was the Dodge guy. Dodge guy? The guy who hit you. You said you were walking toward your car and saw a guy in a black Dodge back into your bug, bang the fender, and drive off. You chased after him, but he never stopped. So today he spots you and the car, and he freaks. Maybe he stands there wondering if he should do the right thing and apologize and give you his number. Then he decides to run off. Something makes you turn, and you think you still see him, but he was already gone. You did not see him, you just remembered him standing there. Just a memory flash. Cops and lawyers will tell you eyewitness testimony is always shaky. Think of magicians. They can fool a whole crowd with, now you see it, now you don't. He twisted his palm back and forth like an illusionist with a trick coin. Ted shook his head. I don't know, he was really there when I looked up. At least for a second. And then he was gone. And something else. I felt he knew me. Like we were connected somehow. Of course he knew you. His Dodge connected with your bug, remember? Look, my car won't be ready until 3. Let's grab a round. Ted sighed, then slid the dollar across the bar and motioned for 2 more buds.
Okay, folks, that's episode 2, and we're going to talk about the stories featured in that. As we had discussed before in episode 1, we have new contributors to our podcast, and we're so excited to have them be a part of our podcast. In this one, Christopher Hayes, the first story, Indulgetia Dulgeo, was the contributor for that story, and we're going to hear a little bit from Christopher right now.
I currently live in Bolton, England, and I am married to Lynn, a tarot reader who provides all of the tarot knowledge and insights that I have used in my writings. I have a master's degree and a certificate in education from the University of Manchester. I currently run my own business and educational consultancy. I also provide consultancy services to Awakening Events Limited and Phenomena e-magazine, who are leading producers of online videos, expositions and publications in the area of ancient mysteries, unidentified aerial phenomena and forbidden knowledge. I started writing fiction around 20 years ago and have written various short stories and novellas. Only this story has so far been met with any success. The inspiration for the story is that it originally started out as a competition entry. I was given the first line and the last line and challenged to fill in the bits in between. The competition first line mentioned the wall and the shrine, but this version does not include the last line. Both beginning and end have been changed from my original competition entry. I have a keen interest in other cultures, and the Mexican Day of the Dead just sprung to mind. The Charon, Hades and other bits developed as I went along. I take a long time developing stories, mixing all sorts of references as the dreamscape unfolds. I also undertake a lot of research into various topics. In all of my writings, I look for the unusual, the unique perspective.
Thanks, Christopher, for bringing us in on what was going on with you and the story. So now let's talk about the story. This was really amazing. I mean, I got to admit that Christopher really stepped it up in terms of, my ability to understand and all that. I had to do some research to make sure I understood what was going on. He referenced classical literature. He referenced Mexican Hispanic literature and culture. These were all things that were new to me in some way, although I still had some familiarity with it, but certainly the depth of which Christopher went to in this story was something that I needed to do a little bit of research for. So what was your impressions of his story?
Indulgetia Dulgeo was great in the sense of that it took me, and I've said this before in the podcast, it took me to an environment, and I know you added audio, Lawrence, and it was really great with the sounds and bringing me to it, but the environment and the was great, and then the details that the author did was just amazing to me. I mean, I don't know this world, I don't know this environment, but it was great in the sense that it was something that kind of put me into the place and really kept my attention.
Yeah. I mean, so when I started reading his story, one of the things that occurred to me was the classic story from Greek mythology of the ferryman.
Right.
The guy who takes the living who have passed over across the river to the land of the dead.
Yeah.
Hades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a version of that, but it's very compressed. We're within this little courtyard. We're talking about this altar. We're talking about the coins, which also is part of the Greek mythology. I was just literally drawn in by his ability to tap into the Hispanic version of this mythology,
right,
and very fascinated as to what was happening here. Who was this girl that he encounters?
And the perspectives, of all the characters was just something that just really brought me in and enthralled me.
Yeah.
In the sense of everybody involved. It was just, it made the story. It made the story for me in the sense of I wanted to know more. I wanted to be able to experience. I was experiencing it with him, but it was a great story, and I think that it is something that to be honest with you, I think I would like to know more about.
Yeah, right, for sure. I mean, the girl, especially when she shows up on the scene, right away starts this dynamic between the ferryman, essentially, is what this guy is, and this person who has some ability to be interactive with this supernatural being.
Right.
And maybe she herself is on that plane. Maybe she is part of this supernatural space that the ferryman exists in.
That's what I was thinking too. Like maybe she's on the same, but maybe she's a sensitive. Maybe she's somebody that is can see this or can kind of feel it, whatever like that.
Right.
And it was really cool because I'm really into the ghost hunting stuff and things like that at times, and the sensitives and things like that, and I think that really exists in the sense of there's certain people that are obviously not us, but that have that sensitivity, and I thought that was really a big thing that kind of brought me in.
Well, and I think the thing for me as I got deeper into the story, I started to realize that this person is someone who was important to the woman who shows up at the altar.
Right.
And possibly the reason that this person who's being transported from the land of the living to the dead is going to the destination that he's going to.
Yeah.
So now it's not just about going to the land of the dead. It's actually you're going to a land of punishment. You're going to hell because you did something horrible in life to this woman who came to the altar and met the ferryman. And I risk exposing what I think is what the story is about versus what Christopher meant by saying, I think this woman who came and met the ferryman was the daughter of the woman who came to the altar, and the man who is being transported from the living to the dead is the father who abused the daughter in some way and possibly killed her. And now this is her way of seeking revenge by making sure that his soul goes to hell.
You know, that's really interesting. I didn't get that part. I did get it to the point that it was a female that wanted to make somebody pay the price. And I don't know what the price is. What you said could be possibly true. But my thing is that I love the whole thing about how it took me to the point to where it's like, even though someone does something like this in this story, there's a way to go to a place, pay the price, be it 2 coins or whatever it is, and just send somebody to deal with it or whatever like that. I do like what you said.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that kind of that kind of.
It's like a revenge
process.
story, is what I'm thinking.
Oh, it's a very good revenge story. Yeah.
Right.
But my thing is that I really like the ability, like how Christopher made it to where it was something that this happened. We don't know exactly what happened. I don't. Lawrence apparently does. I'm just kidding. Or we have good ideas. But my thing is that as far as like what occurred was that he paid the price, and it was really enthralling, really good.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Christopher. You've already had this story published, but we thank you for sharing it with us on the Shade Chronicles. So now we move into this next story, which is Flashes, which is by Mark Connelly. And Mark put together a nice little story that is a little bit of a mind twister as well, in that we have a character who encounters himself from 50 years prior to where he is right now. It's some kind of time warp, time shift scenario that happens. What did you think?
I love that these two characters are in the same realm. And my biggest thing was, as far as the character that was in our time saw a guy that looked like him but younger, and then when we get the 2 perspectives were awesome. And the other guy, the younger version of him, saw the older version and thought it was like his grandfather.
Right.
And I just thought that just really appealed to me, because I love those kind of time travel stories in the same place, because maybe it's a thing of, I would love to have that situation happen to me. But I think that this story was like, everybody can relate to that. Everybody can relate to having that feeling that they saw this or they felt that.
Kind of a deja vu kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a deja vu, but I agree with that, but everybody wants that feeling. Everybody wants that feeling that, hey, I think my person that passed away that I loved is still seeing me, and maybe I saw them.
Right.
I just thought it was a great, and the explanations, the details of both kind of environments. Mm-hmm. I mean, the cost of beer, the cost of whatever. Right. I wish a beer still costs that.
Yeah, right.
I wish Lawrence and I can go somewhere and buy a beer for $1.
No
and
shit.
Split it.
Right.
But anyway, it was just great. I loved it. It was a great story, and I loved the. It wasn't necessarily time travel, but I just love how the 2 environments coexisted together in that story, and both of them knew what was going on, and the people explaining the things that might be what it is entertained me aggravated me, entertained me, but then also made sense because that's what would happen in real life.
Yeah, right. Well, and let me just tell you a little bit about Mark. So Mark has a master's degree in creative writing and a PhD, for Christ's sake, in English from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And again, he said this story was inspired by the thought of merging two dramatic situations, time travel and an encounter with a doppelganger. Instead of traveling to the past, what if we saw our past and future selves kind of right there in front of us, which is a very interesting concept that, again, it's kind of that deja vu thing is really where I keep going to is you think that you're experiencing something that has already happened, but in this case, you're actually watching yourself doing it 50 years ago, and it seems like it's right there in front of you.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. It put me there. I could see what he was seeing. I could see what both of them were seeing. But the details were the thing it was. I mean, what he did at the bar and talking to his friend and the way he talked about the iPhone or whatever the phone was, the
how he
smartphone.
Described the other person with that magical thing in his hand that seemed like a small TV set or something like that.
Yeah. That's what I loved. I love that type of thing because I can envision it. I love drawing. I love drawing pictures for things and things like that. So I'm kind of envisioning like this guy, the older version is seeing the smartphone, and then the smartphone person is seeing this person that's like confused by what the hell he's seeing.
Right.
I just loved it. It was great.
So that is going to conclude episode 2. But anyway, here's a preview of episode 3, and we thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Next time on the Shade Chronicles.
After what seemed like a few seconds, but is 10 minutes in real time, the older man drains another beer, puts it on the ledge of the inside of the bar. He looks in the direction of the bartender, motions her over. She quickly excuses herself from another customer and says, "I'm sorry, I did not know you were ready for another." She quickly reaches into the cooler, pops the bottle cap off, and sets the beer on the coaster, and at this same instance, the old man places his hand on hers. He quietly asks, "Will you help me with something? What can I help you with?" He increases his grasp on her hand, looks into her eyes, and says, "I would like you to help me kill my wife."
You probably don't remember me, Nancy Farber.
Should I?
Staples High. You were friends with Jessica Payne and Pamela Goodman. Boys called you the Playmates of Westport.
Can I help you?
You don't remember me, do you? Nancy Farber.
I'm afraid I don't.
I voted for you to be prom queen. I always liked you. But you told everyone I looked like a cross between Elvira and the Pillsbury Doughboy? That wasn't nice, Heather. I just wanted to be your friend. But you made fun of me for not having a date for prom. It's not my fault I wasn't pretty like you. I just wanted you to like me.
Listen, Heather said curtly, I don't know who you are. I don't remember any Nancy Farber. That was over 30 years ago. What kind of gag is this? Gripping the wheel, she slowed as the road curved sharply. I have to go. Have a nice day.
Heather, you ruined my life, so now I have to ruin yours.
Heather reached up to end the call when the car lurched forward, gathering speed. She took her foot off the accelerator and frantically pumped the brakes. The BMW slammed into the guardrail, flipped over, and slid down the hillside, coming to rest against a clump of oaks that showered the shattered car with yellow leaves.
Like most of the kids in the neighborhood, Eamon McTaver loved the old-school stories. In particular, he loved the scary ones. On special nights, these storytellers would share their legends with the local kids. One night, not unlike many others back in those simple days, a story was told, and when it was done, Eamon wished he had never heard it. In the damp Irish air, he began. "Ye all like tall tales, don't ye?" he asked. "Well, that was where I first heard this tale. It's no mystery around these parts that folks would steal things, little trinkets mostly, from the waiting dead. They would steal these things hoping the waiting dead wouldn't rise again," the man said as he stepped back from the fire. He stood still for a moment or two in the darkness. Well, what is more of a mystery is how often the waiting dead would retrieve these items, he added with the slightest tremor in his voice.
Thanks again for listening to the Shade Chronicles. For comments or inquiries, you can contact us at shadechron@gmail.com. That's SHADECHRON@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also get more information at theshadechronicles.com. The Shade Chronicles podcast is the creative property of Derek Leffridge and Lawrence Trokey. Any attempt to replay for broadcast or distribution portions of any episode of the Shade Chronicles without the prior written consent from the creators and/or significant compensation is strictly prohibited. Shame on you for even thinking about it in the first place. Thanks again for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of the Shade Chronicles.